handed him to me, and I looked at him, and the first thing I said was, "He sure is cute." And then I said, "But he's not Jack." And I handed him to Anne, and she looked at him and she said, "He's Amos."
He kind of went through a bunch of different phases, little kids. He went from the Lego phase to the Nerf gun phase to the Minecraft phase to the drawing phase. And once he was in the drawing phase, he never left. He just continually drew, and he drew on his papers at school. He drew on the backs of his homework. He drew instead of doing his homework. He drew and gathered.
He, I don't, very young, 3 maybe, said to Anne, I want to draw. She told me to draw a circle. I want to draw a circle. So she, of course, like everybody learned, you make the square and then you draw the circle inside the square. And he's like, no, a circle, like the world. He wanted to draw a sphere. He didn't want to draw a circle. So, of course, Anne.
So, anyway, he was a really good kid for a long time. And then all of a sudden he wasn't. And it happened really fast. It took us by surprise. So Amos kind of grew up around sober people and with a lot of conversation about 12-step programs. And he kind of knew about that and what was going on. And I think that he was he was afraid of alcohol. I think he was trying to kind of not to drink. And so he started smoking pot first. And then he was hanging out with some kids that had access to Xanax and used to do Xanax. And right around the time of his 18th birthday, a bunch of traumatic kind of stuff happened to him. I think he was also struggling with some gender issues. He talked about thinking that he might be gay or that he might be bi. At one point, he told me that he wished he was a girl, and we talked about issues like sexuality and drug use and stuff pretty openly in our house. And he said he didn't think that he wanted to actually be a girl. He just didn't like being a man. So. And I think some of that is, he just really he probably identified more with girls. I think he identified more with me than he did with Dane.
He loved to go fishing, and that was our biggest bond that I had with him. He never took to being a hunter. The thought of killing something didn't agree with him, which was fine. And being the artist, they spent more time together going that direction.
This is a pretty sort of, I guess, conventional kind of place, and so a lot of the guys at his school are like, football guys and kind of jerky guys, and he didn't like that. He was really sensitive to people's emotions, really sensitive to people's feelings, very perceptive about what was going on emotionally. Once his brain got wrapped up in drugs and alcohol, he just couldn't get out. He couldn't see his way out, and he went through 30-day treatment, and then he went through longer-term treatment. And bless his heart, he kept saying, "I just want to be normal. I just want to have a normal college experience. I want to be able to go to parties. I want to drink like everybody else drinks." And it's really hard when you're 19 to think about not being able to drink or do drugs for the rest of your life. So he was, even though he went through all this treatment, and he definitely identified what was going on. He identified that he was anxious. He identified that he was depressed, but he still was really focused on getting out and drinking and using again. And so he started going to college, taking a couple classes. He got a job, was doing great, made some money, and he stashed some money up, left, and ran away. We didn't really know what to do at that point. We didn't support him. We didn't want to give him any money. He had some money of his own, and we said, if you can get an apartment and get a job, get a therapist. He had gotten into art school, And I said, if you can like keep yourself straight and together, did not want to go back to treatment, you know, we'll support you in that journey. And he was in Massachusetts for a week, and as somebody said to us, you know, unfortunately he died before he could hit bottom. He was drinking on the beach with his girlfriend doing Xanax, and we still don't know how it happened, but he drowned. So we don't know if he passed out and the tide came in. We don't know if he fell and hit his head. We don't know if somebody threw a rock at him. We don't know if he walked into the water. So I don't think that he was suicidal. He had made suicidal threats before, but at that point he had just gone to the grocery store and stocked up his refrigerator. They picked a whole bunch of flowers that day and had them in vases in the apartment. And I think he was kind of excited about having like a real life. But again, it was, you know, one of those things where as soon as he took one drink or one Xanax, then I think he would lose track, like how many have I taken? He told his girlfriend, don't let me, if I do a Xanax, don't let me have any other ones because I will, you know, I'll lose count. So we found out later that he was ordering drugs off of the dark web, getting them shipped to his post office box, and then selling them and making money. There was like drugs in a letter that said it was from the Boy Scouts of America on the return address. There were drugs stuck inside of magazine pages, inside of aluminum foil.
All kinds of ways they mailed it.
All kinds of ways they mailed it. Inside of packages, inside of FedEx envelopes. It was really eye-opening. We had no idea that was going on. So I feel like from the ages of 17 and a half until he died, he was just a little bit past 19 when he died. He was out of the house. There's just a lot of chaos going on. So that whole year was super traumatic for us. And yet, he was making art like crazy that whole time.
I would say the last 2 years of his life, from adolescence on, I didn't know him, you know, because he couldn't tell me who he was. He didn't know who he was,
right?
You know, and I started to look at the art. I learned more from the art about him from that period than I knew. I knew him better after he passed.
When he was still relatively together, when he was 17, he got into Cal Arts. He got into the Chicago Art Institute. He got into Montserrat, which is where he eventually ended up deciding to go. So when we ended up having the service for him, we had we pulled out all of the art that we could find of his, and that was when we really started realizing how much there was.
Yeah, and that's when I would look at it, and of course I'm extremely biased, but as far as I'm concerned, he's one of the best modern artists of his age. Anyone that sees it just goes, what, who, how old was he, what, you know, just like, you know, and every time someone sees it for the first time that is somebody, is just blown away.
We decided to try to preserve his artwork, to get it shown around as much as we could, and also we wanted to affiliate his work with some effort to help other gifted young artists, especially those who are struggling with any kind of mental illness or emotional upset, with gender dysphoria, with substance abuse. There's such a, I always say the prevailing wind in society often tells young artists that they're crazy, that they're going to starve to death, that there's no future, that what they're passionate about is not important, that it's not going to pay them any money, that they're never going to get anywhere. Just all these negative messages flooding into someone who's right at the point of deciding what they want to do with their life, and being able to continue to make art and just continue to express yourself in the face of all that like headwind going against you. I feel like there needs to be more support in the other direction that tells people it is important, and that it does make sense, and that you don't have to be crazy, and that it's not going to make you crazy, and that you don't have to do drugs and drink to be inspired. And just all of those myths about the, mentally ill, drug addicted artists that don't have to be true. We really want to establish some major endowment to help people get the education they need, to help people get the emotional support they need, to help people get the career support they need, and maybe focus on the high school and college age young artists. As a mother, it's still horrible. It's the most horrible thing that could ever happen, I think, to anyone. Really, making it through this is the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. And what keeps me going is when I look at his work, I feel almost like his mind is still here. Like he's still here, he's still with me. Like, Vincent van Gogh, I feel like Vincent is still here too. And Amos was really inspired. He studied a lot of artists. He was exposed to a lot of art. He loved Egon Schiele, who was also died at a young age and was troubled. And I feel like he could really relate to him. And he's lucky that he had some wonderful, wonderful, great friends that are really talented also, that never forget him. They bring him forward into their artwork too. And so they keep in touch with me, and that keeps me going too. But, I miss him every day. I miss him every minute of every day. And I just hope that somehow from knowing about his story, it helps other people. It helps remind people that drugs are dangerous, even drugs that don't maybe seem like they're dangerous. Like, there's such an epidemic of overdoses now of, the heroin and fentanyl is really toxic, and it's killing a lot of people. But other things can kill people too. Something as simple as alcohol is not necessarily safe. Pot was not safe for him. So if that inspires anyone or helps someone to think twice about using, or saves anyone a minute of trouble, that is worth it. And it gives me a lot of joy to be around other young artists.
Itself on a whole lot of different type of coping mechanisms. One, in this day and age, being substance abuse. And there's just so much, and that's what these kids turn to. With that sensitivity, comes mental health issues and anxiety and depression, and it's all part of the package. And it seems that young artists suffer because of that. And